Hi class, and welcome to the second module, South Asian Identities. So in the last class, which was almost a week ago, because of all the problems that had been having, we couldn't have a live class. But when we had the last class, we had begun discussing a little bit about what the second module is about, and I had told you about remember South Asian identities, and we were discussing which countries come under South Asia. So this particular module, that is module 2, deals with South Asian identities. In the previous module, we studied about diasporic identities. Okay, and we understood what diaspora is and how in each of the works the writer has a diasporic identity, or at least a diasporic feeling is being put forward through those works. In this particular module, South Asian Identities, there are works from 4 eminent authors of this particular region. They belong to this region. Some of them, even though they are belonging to this region, are also living in the Western countries, okay? And you might think why they are not diasporic writers. They are also diasporic, but the particular works that we have taken up for the purpose of study in this particular module will not deal with diaspora or nostalgia or things, loss of identity and all. It will talk about how the South Asian identity is being established through these works. Okay, എങ്ങനെയാണ് ഈ വർക്സിലൂടെ a South Asian identity നമുക്ക് കാണാൻ സാധിക്കുന്നത്. That is what we will study in this particular module. And the selection of stories, or this module has all of them are stories. We do not have a poem. And here it talks about the graphic representation of the conflicts and the trauma-ridden life of people and the life experiences of the people who lived in these areas. If you know a little bit about South Asia, you'll know that most of these were colonies. Some of these had, like India, Pakistan and Bangladesh, they had very traumatic experiences of partition. There's a place like Sri Lanka where communal conflict and the fight between the Sri Lankans and the Tamilians are, it's a very big issue even today. So all those works, okay, all those issues of South Asia in particular will be discussed in this particular module, and it will show us basically how their national identities are being put forward. Okay, now if you read the story, you must have already understood. It is a very, very direct, the Dog of Tithwal is the story that we'll be discussing, and that story gives us a very, very direct idea about the question of identity, and I'm sure you enjoyed reading the story. So let's begin the discussion on this chapter by talking a little bit about Sadat Hasan Manto, who is the writer of this particular story called The Dog of Tithwal. So Manto was born in the year 1912 and he died in 1955. He was a writer, playwright, screenwriter, and journalist who was born to a middle-class Muslim family in Punjab, in Ludhiana district. Okay, and when he was born, it was in 1912. Remember, so India was not yet partitioned; it was still under the British rule. Okay, and he studied from Aligarh Muslim University, and he began his writing career by doing some translations, and then he worked at All India Radio for a while, and then he started writing some scripts for films, okay, in Bombay, and he published many short stories during this period also. However, it was during this time, when he was very in a prominent phase in his career, that India gained independence. Okay, and what happened as a part of independence, we discussed this in the last class, partition. Okay, and what happened is that during partition, the area of Punjab that Manto originally belonged to was going to be part of Pakistan. Okay, and even though during that time Manto was living in Bombay, he had to move. Okay, he had to leave. So the partition was bloody and brutal, and we've talked a lot about it. And for Manto, more than the brutalness, more than the meaningless loss of blood and lives, he thought that partition was very, very senseless. He didn't see the point behind this. Okay, but it was a personal tragedy, because he and his family lost a lot during the partition. And That is why some of his very good works are based on stories of partition. Okay, and this this person, Samanto is now known as the best chronicler. Who's a chronicler? Someone who tells stories, right? Someone who chronicles, or someone who records what happens during a particular period in history. And Manto is now considered to be one of the best chroniclers of the partition time. Okay, because of his work that he published during that time, and because personally also he was affected by the tragedy of partition. Though Bombay was, very, very close to Manto's heart, he worked there, and, when he wrote, the example given in your text is, Bombay was to Manto how Dublin was to James Joyce. I don't know if you have heard of James Joyce. He's a very, very famous Irish writer, and he has written one of the famous books that he's written is A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, Ulysses. Okay, all those are his famous works. Now, in his works, all of his works, okay, his setting, the place where his novels and stories are set, is Dublin in Ireland. Okay, and that place is very, very close to his heart, and that closeness that he has to that place is very, very evident in his works. So for Manto also, Bombay was a place that was very, very close to his heart, but he had to leave it due to the partition. Okay, and he moved to the newly created Pakistan. But even when he moved to Pakistan, he was very, very a critical journalist. Okay, and he used to slam all the policies that the Pakistani government came up with. And he predicted, even just during the time of the partition, he predicted that Pakistan, if it goes, he said that, that it will become a autocratic state. He said that Islamic fundamentalism will take rise in Pakistan, and it will never be peaceful ever again, is something that he predicted very, very long ago. And because of his graphical and satirical writing, ഒന്നും പേടിക്കാതെ എല്ലാം തുറന്നു പറയുന്ന ആ ഒരു സ്വഭാവം ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു എഴുത്തുകളിൽ. Because of that, he was always followed by controversy, and he was obviously the Pakistani and Islamic government were very much against his writing, and that is why he has to face many issues. And due to all of this, because of the feelings of partition, because of having to leave Bombay, the place that he loved, because of being always under controversy and under the scanner of the government, Manto had a very, very sad life. He was never happy. Okay, but he is a very legendary writer both in India and in Pakistan, and he is an acclaimed writer across the globe right now. And he has been compared to some of the great English writers. His writings have been compared to this great English writers. Okay, so that's a little bit about Manto, and now we'll start discussing about the story as such, The Dog of Tithwal. Okay, now as the title itself suggests, the hero of our story, or rather the protagonist of our story, we can call him a hero, we can call him a victim. I hope all of you have read the story. If you have not, please pause, go read, and then watch this video, because otherwise it won't make sense to you. All right. So this particular story, our protagonist or the main character is a dog. Okay. Does this dog have a name? Yes. In fact, this dog is given two names. All right. But we'll come to that. So the story begins. If you have read the story, you can see that it begins on page 32, almost half of page 32, and up till half of page 33, so almost one whole page. It's a description of nature. Okay, it's a description of the setting, the place. Okay, and very, very detailed description, and very beautifully done, for that matter. He talks about the weather, he talks about the birds, all right, and he talks about how what is happening. He's setting the stage for us. Okay, now, why does he do that? Let's begin. Let's look at the first line and see how that works. For some time now, the two sides had been entrenched in their positions on the front. Over the course of a day, the sound of firing could be heard some 10 or 12 times from either side, but no human cry ever accompanied its report. All right. Now, when we begin the story, we don't know what is happening, who are the characters, nothing. But we are told that there are two sides. Okay, that is the only thing that we understand in the beginning of the story, that there are two sides, and that gunfire, okay, firing is happening from both sides. So immediately, where are you placed? You are placed in a war context. okay, where two opposing armies or two opposing sides are facing each other and they are firing day in and day out, okay. But over the course of the day, some 12, 10 times you could hear the sound of firing, but no human cry ever accompanied its report. That means even though firing was happening, there was no human cry. What does that mean? It means that they were not hitting at each other, they were just hitting randomly to make their presence shown, okay. They were not attacking each other directly, and that is why no one was dying and no one was crying, okay. So from this we can understand that there are two sides and they are basically not doing anything, they're just firing, okay, and not even at each other. So then what are they doing then? We are confused now. Let's see.